always tell our wife that evening meal was not so good as that. And she says that always.
Because
But anyway,
come by the way on, long before that the parents and the other one day is almost there.
for instance, all people pass through the
Come here, please come. Continued as Federal Chancellor from 1969 to 1974, the first Social Democrat to have ever been elected to the high office, was remarkable in more ways than one. He will, among other things, be remembered in history for his pioneering service and political courage in breaking the prolonged deadlock that existed over the German question between the two military blocs in Europe. With this characteristic diplomacy, he successfully initiated a policy of detente towards the Soviet Union, to which he received a positive response. And while pursuing this policy of reconciliation, Mr. Brandt continued to work for closer ties with the United States and made valuable contribution to the expansion and consolidation of the European Economic Community. The role thus played by Mr. Brandt in the removal of the tensions generated by the Cold War and for the promotion of an atmosphere of comparative peace received befitting recognition when he was chosen for the coveted Nobel Prize in 1971. He has been the guiding star throughout his active political life. Respect for democratic institutions and protection of civil liberties has been his passion. We in India can never forget the deep concern expressed by Mr. Brandt personally, as also by the Socialist International, of which he is at present the leading luminary, or the development in our country following the imposition of emergency 2 years ago. Early this year, between the developed and developing countries on international economic cooperation. We are confident that he would find a workable and satisfying solution to this challenging assignment of bridging the gap between the rich and the poor countries, and to reach a consensus among the developed and developing countries for mutual cooperation in the interest of accelerating.
Years ago, I once before spoke to a group of members of parliament. This building didn't exist then, as far as I can remember. So it was in a room in the other building. At that time, I was mayor of Berlin before I became foreign minister, and then, as the speaker said, federal chancellor. And at that time, I was traveling around the world in order to ask for moral support. Because without understanding and moral support, I think, together with my fellow citizens, I wouldn't have survived. And it meant very much to me then that I found such understanding at a place like Delhi. I remember that meeting with the parliamentarians at that time. It was a lady who was deputy foreign minister who introduced me then. And I spoke to Prime Minister Nehru at that time, and I said, I need your help. Because since we are victims of a confrontation, it is not so important what the Americans tell Mr. Khrushchev. It might be more important what you, the Indian Prime Minister, tells Mr. Khrushchev. And I have reason to believe that what he said was paid attention to. That belongs to those chapters of history which almost never are written. Things which not have to do with great battles, but have to do with quiet talks, attempts to moderate people's minds, lead them towards reasonable decisions and solutions. Now, to reduce confrontation, bring about a greater readiness to cooperate, to replace the word aid by mutuality of interest, to, in a way, rearrange the scene. And there, I must admit, is a certain bridge between what I'm trying now and what I've been trying in the early 70s, where I also faced a situation where certain basic conflict of interest and ideologies could not be avoided, but or be brought to disappear, but where it was possible to discover areas of common interest. And this is what we are aiming at, discovering larger areas of common interest instead of just going on with the quarrels at international conferences. We have the advantage of not being under government instructions. We don't carry with us the burden of prestige, which so often play a great role at international conferences. If we are not successful, no damage will be done. There will be not done harm to anyone. We would just have added another book to the already existing library of publications on development issues. I hope we will. But the first part of the question was on how far we had come with the organization of our work. The Commission, as it says in the written announcement, the Commission had its first meeting near Bonn a week and a half ago. We organized our work. We agreed upon the terms of reference, which means on the working program for the 18 months ahead of us. The Secretariat will be established in Geneva at the beginning of January. My paper tells who will be the executive secretary and the director of the Secretariat in Geneva. They will have a little permanent staff, and then they will draw into their work experts from various parts of the world, not all on full-time basis, of course. And we will, after our next meeting, we will give certain, not instructions necessarily, but we will ask the staff to prepare things for us in one area after the other, and certain papers I think will have to pass the Commission several times. The second part of the question on what influence this may have on the developing countries, I decided that in the Commission, and this independent Commission, there should be a majority of members from developing countries. I do not believe in this artificial kind of balance, 50-50. There is a majority of people living in the developing world. It's only fair, at least to a certain degree, also to accept this if you put together a commission of this kind. But it would not be the right thing for the chairman of such a commission now to speak about the contents of the whole.
Bloc countries. Could you throw more light on this? Do you propose to include some members from socialist bloc countries or any one of your commission members?
We are not putting ourselves instead of those who have been negotiating there. This is going on behind the scenes in a way at another place. But I would invite Mr. Ramphal to give his opinion on the outcome of the Paris talks. He has been rather close to the problems then, and perhaps may give us some idea of what was achieved and about the greater part of, unfortunately, things to which one will have to return.
Well, of course, all dialogue is some achievement. But the great disaster of Paris is that it took no decisions. In fact, it was so bad that Paris could not even agree upon the character of its disagreements. And that left the world really in a terrible state of indecision and uncertainty. It was a great experiment in reducing the international dialogue to the committee system. And it was very important to the world because the world is becoming a very large negotiating body, almost too cumbersome in many respects. But it failed, and I think it failed largely because there wasn't a sufficient political will on the part of the developed countries to come to terms with some of the basic structural issues. Now, your second question was how much do you pick up and how much do you discard? Certainly, the Brandt Commission.
I mean, I will not just answer by telling a joke, but I'm inclined to do so. When I told my successor, Chancellor Schmidt, that I would chair this commission, he said he would wish me all the best, but he added that he was afraid it would not get cheaper for the Federal Republic. So he had an impression, I think, the right impression, that even if we didn't move too far, I couldn't just afterwards, if we moved at all, I couldn't just afterwards say this has no relevance as far as my own country is concerned. So we will not be able to